Hey there, it's Jeff Luther, and you are diving into the podcast for the Service Business Blueprint. This is where I walk with you and help you unlock the secrets to building a thriving service-based business. We talk about everything from starting out to setting milestones in your company you didn't even know would exist. We'll cover entrepreneurship, personal growth, mindset, everything you need for success in your service-based business. You ready to build that blueprint? Welcome back to the Service Business Blueprint, where I am sharing tools, tips, strategies. I want to help you achieve your personal and your business goals and overcome mindset obstacles. I'm your host, Jeff Luther, and in today's episode, we're going to continue that story of mindset. We're going to continue talking about mindset, outlook, and this is kind of on the coattails of the last episode that we did. The mind is such a mysterious thing. It's funny, I always tell folks that my mind or my experience, my mind, my experience, my mindset is the most valuable thing that I can offer folks, and it's my own worst enemy always at the same time. I easily see the greatness in others, and I dig to find my own faults. We have to be very careful. So in that last episode, I talked about the way our mind looks for negatives, our lizard brain. It's kind of how we're programmed. It's hard coded into our DNA to find threats. It's our protector. Our mind is our protector. Our brain's our protector. But remember, it can make us miss out on things. I went into asking negative questions. I talked about that in the last episode. Questions like, what's going to go wrong? Or why won't this work? Or what's going to happen? What do I need to look for? What's going to be something I don't like about this person? Those are the things I called shitty questions. Then I talked about great questions, asking great questions. What's great about this? You remember when I said, you might ask a kid, what's great about this? And they'll say, no, nothing. Nothing's great about this. Okay, well, if something were great about this, what would it be? The intent of that, the idea is to get us thinking differently. Instead of why won't this work or what's wrong, because you ask yourself what's wrong, that's what you start looking for. You look for what's wrong. The intent is to get you thinking differently. What I always say is, all right, so let's Tony Robbins it, right? You look for the greatness, look for something good. So it's changing that mindset. In that episode, I went through the whole story of paddleboarding with my youngest son, Knox. My youngest is my favorite, and he was the one I was paddleboarding with, and we talked about that. He was behind me, and I was asking the question, should I go back? What's wrong? Why is he so far behind? And then I went through why I should go back and what was wrong, and I was coming up with all these things that could have happened to him. But then I did, what's great about this? What's great about this? All right, what's great about it? One, I wanted him to be up where I was, that's a control issue and probably a whole separate topic. But what was great about it? What was great is, he was spending time on his own, right? He was out in the marsh, totally on his own, paddleboarding. He learned to figure it out. That's another thing he learned. As the current was pushing him and the wind was pushing him, he learned to figure it out. So he just kind of sat down on his board, blocked the wind, and just took his own sweet time. What else was great about that? He was doing it his way. That's what was great about that. And there were several great things. He was getting his own independence. He was learning what worked well and what didn't work well. He was learning how to modify how he was paddling. So that prompted, when I was talking about that, I started making notes, started writing down notes, and that prompted this episode. So see, I was going to go back to him, but why? I was going to go back to help him if he needed it, but let's be honest, I was probably going back to give him advice on how to get back to the landing quicker. You know what? He knew how. He'd stand up, he'd dig in, and he'd paddle a little bit harder. I've seen him do it. He didn't want to. He didn't want my advice. Really what I wanted to do was go back and have him do it my way. If you boil it down, this would have been me basically telling him that he wasn't smart enough to solve a problem on his own. He didn't know that he had, and I was going to go save him, right? That's probably as much of a control issue as it is anything. But I didn't do that. I started asking myself great questions. What's great about it? So that would have been me giving him advice. And this is kind of how I look at advice. Giving someone advice is basically telling them they're not capable of solving their own problems or their own issues, but you're smart enough to do that for them. It drives me nuts. It drives me nuts when people do it to me, but we all do it. We do it to each other. We do it all the time. A business group I'm in, we meet once a month in our forum. There's 6 of us. Advice is not welcome. Giving advice is not welcome in that group. Actually, it's really not allowed. It's frowned upon. So as the moderator of that group, when people start giving advice or what I would do, you kind of get flagged. You have to rein it in. And, we can ask questions to get people to the answers they already know, but giving advice really is not accepted. Now, in that group, you can opt to get advice or something along the lines of what would you do if you were me sort of thing. Like sometimes we have people in our group that come up on a business issue that none of us have ever experienced. So we can't experience share, but they will say, okay, well, will you give me advice or will you tell me what you would do if you were me? I disagree with both of these. I think that's a slippery slope, and here's why. If you look at someone and say, here's what I would do if I were you, that's already a lie. And here's why. Because you have no idea. You have no clue what you would do if you were that person. You're 2 totally different people with completely different emotions. So you have no idea what you would do. You don't have that emotional attachment in the moment. So let me explain that. What would you do if you were me? I had a health issue a couple of years back. It changed my life drastically forever. Even if every doctor on the planet came back and confirmed that I'm totally fine, that it was a complete misdiagnosis, I will never be the same emotionally. Now, that's not a bad thing. I'll just never be at the point where I was before that happened to me, emotionally. So I will never be the same emotionally. People would tell me all the time what they would do if they were me. When I was really in it and I was going through the processing of the diagnosis I got, people would say, here's what I would do. Not very rarely was it, do you want to know what I would do? It was more often, here's what I would do. It was also, here's what you should do. So there was a lot of that. People would tell me that pretty often. No one has any idea what they would do. There's no emotional attachment. So I have 3 boys. You all know that Knox was my favorite, the one I paddleboarded with. But I've got 3 boys. My middle son, Wyatt. This is a total hypothetical. So I'm going to talk about my favorite son, my middle one, Wyatt. Wyatt's my favorite. Let's assume, this is total assumption, Wyatt's a super good dude, and good is relative, right? But let's just take the hypothetical that, and Wyatt is the right age, he's 17, so he's the right age for this, and let's say I catch him smoking, right? I go to a friend and I say, oh my gosh, you're not going to believe what happened. I caught my son smoking. Oh yeah, the one that's 17? Yes. Okay, and? No, you don't understand. I caught him smoking. He was smoking cigarettes. And like his life is over. He's smoking cigarettes. Next he's gonna be smoking pot, then doing heroin. I mean, this is just a path of destruction. All the while, that's my emotion, right? I'm conflicted with emotion. All the while, the person that I'm telling this story to is like, yeah, that's what they do. That's what a 17-year-old does. They experiment. They find boundaries. So they don't have that emotional attachment. So that's what I mean when you say, this is what I would do. We have no idea. So, see, you can't get where I am emotionally So your offer of what you would do is completely invalid. Anyone's offer of what they would do if they were you is totally invalid because there's no way they can put themselves in that position. So, and that's kind of like, you know what you should do. You know what you should do? That's what I refer to those as mother-in-law statements. And I don't mean that as an attack on an individual, but just roughly speaking. You know, we've all heard the complaint over the years, but your mother-in-law walks into your house and says, oh, well, here's what I would do if I were you. Or you know what you should do. You know what I would do. And they have no idea. It's like, you know, they walk in and tell you how you should raise your 3 boys. Oh, yeah, well, how did that go for you when you were raising 3 boys? Oh, well, I never had boys. I had girls. So they can't get where you are. They don't understand it. And that makes that advice invalid. I prefer experience share. And I know you may be thinking, okay, well then what do we do? Just keep quiet and just let people talk and nod and smile and say everything's great? I prefer experience share. And most of the time I think that it would be best served if it's the direct experience of the person that's doing the sharing. If not, then someone really close. Maybe this is not my story, but I can share this experience that I know about. I can share when I was in that same position and how it worked out. I can share how it turned out. I can share what emotions I felt at the time and why it drove that decision. I can share how I felt with the outcome. I can share what my other options were and what might have happened. This is helpful to the person that we think we need to give advice to. But giving advice or telling someone what to do or what we would do is usually not going to be helpful. And sometimes people are just looking for permission to make a decision already. Don't take the bait. That's like they look for permission to make a decision, then come back to you when it doesn't work out well. Don't take the bait. So I think that the single greatest, and what I'm getting at with all this, I think that the single greatest asset, skill, feature, whatever you want to call it, that a human has is the ability to come to their own conclusion. I used to do this with my kids, and this may be a good point to talk about running a business versus what I call running a family. And those of you out there that are entrepreneurs that are listening, I think you probably, unfortunately, might identify with that. But sometimes we tend to, quote, run our family the same way we run our business. And I caught myself doing that a lot of times, but I also think there's life lessons there. So those of you out there listening that are entrepreneurs, or those of you out there that might have a connection in the podcast world, if you know someone maybe in psychology, psychiatry, a therapist that works with entrepreneurs in balancing that business life, family life, it might be a great episode to have someone on. And what I'm specifically looking for is like how we talk to employees and how we help employees problem solve, and compare that to how we talk to family members and how we help family members problem solve. Family members don't want to be talked to like an employee, and sometimes as business owners, we lump everyone together. Employees don't want to be talked to usually like family members. So separating the two, trying to find that balance. If anyone knows of an expert that would like to be on our show here, that would be a great connection. You can just send me a message in the link below there. But back to the topic at hand. I think the single greatest asset, skill, feature, whatever you want to call it, that a human has is the ability to come to their own conclusion. What I used to do with my kids on a road trip. Now these boys are probably like 2, 4, 6 years old, 3, 5, 7, 4, 6, 8. At their young ages, anywhere between 3 and 9 years old, you stop at a gas station on a road trip. What do they want? Everybody wants to go in and get a treat, a candy, something, some kind of junk. And sometimes that freedom to choose was overwhelming for my kids. For one kid in particular, for my favorite kid, Cash, he's my oldest and my favorite. for him in particular, he would have such a hard time choosing whatever it is that he wanted. And it got to where I knew it was going to happen with at least one of the kids. A lot of times it was him, but I would give a window. Okay, you have a minute and a half. You've got 90 seconds. You have 2 minutes, whatever that time was. Or I'm going to count to 10, whatever that is. And if you don't have a choice, you lose it altogether. You choose or you get nothing. And the intent was to get them to choose. So I think that the ability to come to one's own conclusion or come to a conclusion is one of the best skills you can have. And then on top of that is the confidence to act on that conclusion, the confidence to act on that choice, contrary to what everybody else might be doing. Here's why. Because if everyone else is doing it, the opportunity is already gone, right? There's no opportunity there. I can relate this back to Knox and the story on the paddleboard. If he's just going to dig in and paddle, then he's going to miss the opportunity to figure out how it works to sit down Indian style on his board and go slow. He's going to miss the opportunity to stop and take a look in the grass and try to find grass shrimp. He's going to miss the opportunity to see if he can find any crabs on the bottom. He's going to miss that opportunity to figure out just how slow he can paddle and still make it back to the landing. He's going to miss the opportunity for all those things if he already does what everyone else is doing, which would have been me. One of the really funny things, though, about opportunities is that they look like risk until they become an opportunity. Okay, so I'll break it down into real life. If I looked at him when he sat down Indian style and started paddling, that was the risk that he was not going to be back at the landing as quickly as I wanted him to be, or he wouldn't make it back at all. But the opportunity was for him to go slow and do it in his own time. Now, I know you've heard me time and time again associating risk with entrepreneurship and people's adversity to risk. I think this is what keeps people from getting started in entrepreneurship. But what's difficult is when you start in entrepreneurship, it's the unknown. You're going to do shitloads and shitloads and shitloads of work, and you have no idea what the outcome is going to be. That's the problem with entrepreneurship. It's not the risk, so to speak. It's the certainty. We don't have the certainty, and really what it boils down to is income, right? Like if I told you were going to be wildly successful as an entrepreneur, but you're only going to make, cap out at $100,000 a year, then what's the success? Really what it boils down to is income. How we pay for those crazy habits that we have, like wearing clothing, having shelter, eating food, all of those things. So you're going to do shitloads of work. You have no idea what the outcome is going to be. That's the hardest part of entrepreneurship. So what I try to do is ask people really good questions. Try to never give advice, because I know that I don't know enough to give advice. So as entrepreneurs, we'll just keep doing what we think is right. And this goes back to opportunity. If everybody is doing it, then it's not an opportunity. The hard part is to keep doing it when people tell you it's wrong. People love to be right. They don't necessarily love for you to be wrong, but people love to be right. See, I told you it wouldn't work. Does that sound familiar? People love to be right. I told you this was too hard. I told you this wouldn't work. I told you it was a bad idea. And they keep telling you, and they keep telling you, and they keep telling you. And it's never going to be right. And it's never going to work until it does. So we turn that risk into the opportunity. The risk is doing something no one else is doing. Every day that it doesn't work, it's an opportunity for someone else or the same person to say, see, I told you. And every day that it doesn't work, it's an opportunity for us to learn why it's not working. So we just keep grinding. All of that being said, to go back to people giving advice. Be careful about taking advice. And I hope maybe next time you think a little bit differently about giving advice, but be careful about taking advice. Understand that that person giving you advice can't get where you are. They don't have that same emotional attachment that you have. And then it goes into opportunity. Opportunity sometimes is masked as risk. And if everybody was doing it, then it wouldn't be an opportunity, right? So keep grinding it out. Stay with it. Questions about this episode in particular, questions about opportunity, about risk, questions about maybe even the forum I'm in, Entrepreneurs Organization. I love the comments that I get. Keep following along, and if you like it, pass it on to somebody else. Just click that like button below. And until next time, I love seeing you guys, and I can't wait to see you again. Thanks for hanging out on the Service Business Blueprint with me, Jeff Luther. Stay in the loop as we keep delivering these strategies to supercharge your service business. Hit subscribe, leave a review, be part of our growing community. Now you have someone to walk with you as we create your service business blueprint. Until next time, remember, where you focus is where your energy goes. Beliefs turn to things, so choose the good ones.